does its thing here.
All right, looks like we're good to go, Daryl.
Yep. Have a great meeting, everyone.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. This is our second Facebook Live as part of our community engagements with over the Broccolini project. As some of you are aware, on October 23rd, 2023, Six Nations of the Grand River elected council voted to approve an agreement with Broccolini Construction Limited, subject to community engagement. The company is building a warehouse on Old Mill Road in Cambridge in an area covered by your Haldeman Treaty and Fort Albany Nanfan Treaty. The agreement with the developer recognizes that developers should accommodate Six Nations of the Grand River for structures built on its traditional and treaty territory. To that end, the company has agreed to a 10-to-1 tree replacement ratio, long-term protection of a wetland, and a payment of $250,000 to Six Nations of the Grand River. I'm going to introduce the team we have today. I'll go into the nature of the team in a moment, but we're the Consultation and Accommodation Process Team, or CAP for short, and we operate out of the Lands and Resources Department. We'll start with Phil Montier for introductions.
Yes, Sego, Phil Montour. I've worked on our land rights since actually 1975, and we've done all the research into our matters, and specifically into this area of land. It's called the Block 1 land. So I'll get into that in more detail, but I've been working on this basically for 48 years, and we commenced litigation in 1995 as the Crown Canada was really not resolving these issues to our satisfaction. So, and we're actively before the courts today. Thank you.
Taylor?
Good afternoon. My name is Taylor Hill. I am Assistant Director at Lands and Resources for Six Nations of the Grand River Elected Council.
LJ?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Lauren Jones. I am the manager here at the Six Nations Wildlife and Stewardship Office.
Elvie?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lauren Vanderlingen, and I am the assistant at the Wildlife and Stewardship Office. Unfortunately, I don't have a camera, so I'll just be a black box today.
Dalen?
Hi, I'm Dalen G. I am a land use officer for elected council.
So thank you again for taking time out of your day to meet with us. In response to previous question, I'm going to briefly talk about the duty to consult and the CAP team, and then Phil is going to talk about litigation. And then we're going to turn to some previous questions that the team will be answering before we get into your questions for today. So your Aboriginal and treaty rights, in theory, are protected under Section 35 of Canada's Constitution and are subject to the Crown's duty to consult and accommodate. The duty to accommodate arises when the Crown has knowledge of the potential existence of an Aboriginal right or title and contemplates conduct which may adversely affect it. The Lands and Resources Department began consulting on behalf of elected council at least by the early 1980s. The first accommodation obtained by the department was the Chiefswood Bridge, which replaced the Old River Ferry. In the early 2000s, the department formalized its consulting work by creating the Consultation and Accommodation Process Team, or CAP team for short. The core staff members of the team are, for the most part, before you today, but also consist of Director Lonnie Bombery, Archaeology Supervisor Tanya Hill Montier, and Consultation Administrative Assistant, Don Russell. In 1994, the CAP team helped implement the Grand River Notification Agreement. A chief benefit of that was having Brant County, Haldeman, and in Brantford agree to send all development applications to our office. So we'd have the opportunity to consult and seek accommodation where appropriate. We generally, there's a large volume of development proposals that come our way, and we generally privilege those where the environment is most threatened by development. In recent years, we've been adding more areas to the developments that we view more closely. Recently, Norfolk County, which is all NANFAN territory, has started sending us all of their development applications. And we expect to announce other municipalities that will begin sending us their development applications next year. And now I'd like to turn it over to Phil to discuss the litigation, because last time there were a lot of questions wondering, what's the litigation? Where's the Litigation Act? How would an accommodation like this one potentially impact the litigation process? So Phil's here to explain that to us.
Well, I'm going to explain it to you, and I'm a filler in here for Lonnie Bunbury, actually, who has the legal background on matters, but I'll bring you up to date on the historical perspective, just to get to grab it all here. As we all know, the 1784 Haldeman Treaty was laid out 6 miles on either side of the Grand River from Lake Erie to its source, which them and their posterity are to enjoy forever. So that's a large tract of land. And in 1798, Block 1 was to be mortgaged. This land, the Broccolini development we're going to talk about, is considered in Block 1. I take it back to the early days because that's how our history begins here. And it was to be mortgaged for 999 years to Philip Stedman. And he passed away before any of the proper documents were tied up by the Crown, because basically the Crown, Imperial Crown at the time, were managing our affairs. They intervened actually and controlled our affairs and what we were doing, and we were basically under the tutelage of them because of the Royal Proclamation of 1763. As much as we argued it, and Joseph Brant actually argued, and the overall principle was that we wanted to create a continual income for the benefits of the Haldeman Treaty for the next 999 years. As I'd mentioned, Philip Stedman passed on before all finalizations occurred, and the land was then mortgaged out. Now, this was all done under the Crown's authority and their direction and their control. And bringing this forward, that's what this court case was about. We commenced in 1994. It's not against the individuals, it's against Canada and Ontario. What has happened to this land? The Six Nations of the day, the leadership of the day, agreed that they wanted it mortgaged out. They wanted people on those lands. They wanted revenue from those lands to come for the benefit of the Six Nations people. The Crown has intervened through all of their ways, and they have not accounted what has happened to that money and where it sits today. And where's the continual revenue that should be coming from these tracts. And that's the basis of our court case. The legal duty to consult and, where appropriate, to accommodate rests with the Crown, be it Crown Ontario and Crown Canada. And the issue here is Canada and Ontario haven't been up to the plate until we started the court case. Ontario has downloaded that responsibility onto the municipalities. And then those municipalities are trying to download it on developers. So it should be Canada and Ontario that really have to step up to the plate. And that's what the whole basis of our court case is. And account to us, where is this money? And all the liabilities associated with it. Now, bring it forward to where we are. Because of the requirements, Six Nations, we under the direction of elective council, we had certain venues in there. One was the archaeological issues, one is the environmental issues, and one is an interim arrangement to receive some form of compensation, some form of an accommodation. It does not sell a land. It does not relieve the Crowns of their responsibility to make our trust whole again by those promises made going back to 1798. So, as a gesture going forward and requirements that the Six Nations under the CAP team put to Broccolini their developments on taking care of the environment and to do some sort of an interim arrangement accommodation that, because we've heard this from the community all along. We always have, all my life working on this for the past 48 years. How come everything's going on around us and we're not benefiting in some form? So this is a first gesture forward, and I think this is one that was done properly, where they consulted with Six Nations for the environmental and the archaeology, which people will talk about later. But as Peter laid out before, there are other benefits that come with it. But it does not relieve Canada or Ontario to go to explain before the courts what happened to all those resources, to the money from that, those mortgages, and where they sit today, and doing a complete accounting and what you can account for. We're going to try and seek before the courts that they make that trust whole again. And that's for an area of 94,000 acres. This is just a small beginning to it. It would be nice if we could get as Peter pointed out, get every municipality, every developer to start going through this process. But this is the first step. And I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you, Phil. Before I ask Lauren to talk about the environment, I'm just going to briefly share with you a map. Sorry for the delay there. Hopefully my colleagues will indicate if they can't hear me or see the map. So that's the complete site. So both in blue and green there is where Broccolini built the warehouse. Now, many of you will know that Amazon is the tenant. So I want to emphasize, we were negotiating with Broccolini, the owner, rather than Amazon. Amazon will take possession as a tenant later this month. And we understand it's a 15-year lease that Amazon has with Broccolini. I'm just about to switch to Lauren. Lauren, would it be helpful if I kept the map on there for a while, or are you good without it?
Yeah, no, that it's actually would be great if you kept it up.
Okay.
So yeah, like we introduced before, my name's Lauren. We were the ones that at the Wildlife and Stewardship Office to say that went through the environmental documents and provided input on them. When we were receiving questions, we received a lot of questions about hunting and fishing explicitly. So I'm going to try and go through hunting first. Now, this is kind of a two-pronged answer, which is basically just what are the impacts to hunting? If you see on the map here, prior to the development, this entire area was agricultural land. You'll see some kind of darker areas. These are called vernal pools. So essentially just bits of water that only appear for a very short amount of time. Because of this, agricultural land doesn't tend to be particularly attractive to a lot of species that you would hunt, like deer or turkey or grouse or anything like that. In addition, I do want to draw the attention to the existing roads that are completely encompassing this area. So you have the Highway 401 to the north there, as well as the nice little roundabout, Dickey Settlement Road. All these roads are currently existing. So even prior to this development, I wouldn't describe this area as being particularly attractive for hunting. In addition to that, though, they do have to do baseline studies within this area as a part of any development process, and no evidence of deer, turkey, grouse, any other species that you would stereotypically hunt were found within these baseline studies. However, the wetland, the little green area in the top left part of your screen there, this is an area that has been identified as provincially significant wetland. This area is not being touched whatsoever by the development. And harvesting activities can still take place here if there's interest in that. For fishing, there's actually no permanent water body which would support fish on this entire project area. Like I said, every area that has water in it is vernal pool, so only has water in it for a very short amount of time and thus cannot support fish. And within the provincially significant wetland, it's mostly just what you would call like wet ground. Another question we got was just regarding the general environmental issues. I don't know if I'm answering this question right now, technically. All of this is mostly addressed within the FAQ. And then we got a question regarding why the FAQ focuses mostly on the environment. We have received feedback in the past saying that people would like to know more about the environmental issues, and so we really endeavored to try and fulfill that, and perhaps maybe too much according to this comment, but yeah, more information is better as far as I'm concerned. Effects on wildlife. Again, this area is originally mostly agricultural land, and so is not particularly generally attractive to a lot of species in terms of food, shelter, or water. Really the thing that we're focusing on and what a lot of our comments focused on protecting was, again, that provincially significant wetland. Because there is a development going in, you could theoretically impact the path of travel for some species, assuming that this is not already being done with respect to the existing roads and infrastructure and developments and stuff around this area that already exist. As we mentioned before, we did manage to negotiate a 10-to-1 tree replacement ratio. Most of those trees will be planted in and around that provincially significant wetland, with a total of 2,000-ish trees, if I remember correctly. And I think that's all I have for the questions on my end. I'm hoping somebody will tell me if I missed anything.
Sounds good. Lauren, did you want the other graphic up as well?
Oh yeah, that would be great actually. So we should mention as well, we've negotiated a charitable research reserve by the name of RARE to take care of this wetland for the foreseeable future. Obviously with this wetland being an area that could theoretically be impacted by all these different things, we want to make sure that's maintained. And so RARE is currently responsible for the maintenance of over 1,200 acres within Cambridge, and they just have the knowledge and expertise on staff to ensure that this wetland can withstand those existing pressures. As a result of RARE being able to access this wetland and remove any invasive species, so on and so forth, they are actually being given a separate access, which can also therefore be used by Six Nations members if there's any interest in collecting medicinal herbs, otherwise harvesting, things like that. I don't see a picture of the access. I don't know if you...
Oh, you don't? Okay.
Yeah.
My apologies. Yeah, it says I'm screen sharing. Are you still seeing the old image?
I'm still seeing the map myself.
All right, let's see what happens. Give me a second, please. That should do it.
There we go. So this is just an ulterior access to that wetland, which again, Six Nations members can utilize if they so choose. But yeah, please let me know if I forgot to mention anything, or if I'm going through like the full FAQ, I can do that as well.
All right, maybe we'll see what kind of questions we get in a moment. And I'm just gonna answer some more of the questions that we got from our previous live stream and other sources. One question is, why is it basically already built? I talked a little bit last time about the MZO, or Ministerial Zoning Order process. So Amazon and the city of Cambridge requested an MZO order, which from the province, which really speeds up the development process. And so that was granted by the province. So that's one reason. The other reason is the agreement between council and Broccolini is, legally binding. And it took a long time, at least, my impression was, almost a year of back and forth between different lawyers to complete the agreement. And, throughout the whole time, construction on the warehouse was proceeding. Phil, I think already answered a couple questions we had that related to litigation. Another question is, for how long is this agreement for? Well, if it receives final approval from council after the engagement process is complete and payment is received, then that's basically it for the agreement. The one exception is monitoring activities to ensure that the 10-to-1 trees are doing well. There's also, another in-wall vegetation feature that will be monitoring. And, then as Lauren already mentioned, there's the wildlife. So we'll be liaising with, the wetland, and we'll be liaising with RARE to monitor, to ensure that it's not being impinged on by employees at the facility. There aren't any other expected problems. What happens if the agreement is not lived up to? Basically, if they don't honor the terms of the agreement, if they do not pay elected council the money, they could be sued for breach of contract. And to the best of my knowledge, we haven't had to take that step for any of our prior agreements. So we certainly don't anticipate any difficulties. Next one, meetings with HDI, ? HDI, along with elected council, both had environmental monitors on the site throughout much of 2022 and 23 field seasons. We understand that HDI has had discussions with Broccolini, but we're not privy to those conversations. What will the building be used for, and will there be a profitable business in it? Yes, as mentioned, at least for the first 15 years of the facility, Amazon will be serving as the tenant. What does accommodation mean? Accommodation means receiving benefits on development until the status of the land is finally determined. It is important to note that, as Phil noted, the court case is not asking for the return of any land. Question mark, timeline on developments. As a previous question observed, it's basically all wrapped up now. They're doing very minor landscaping work on the outside. It's mostly interior work. As mentioned, Amazon will actively take up its tenancy soon. They'll begin moving equipment in the building. I'm assuming that it'll be up and running as a full Amazon warehouse before the end of the year. Is there any signage or land acknowledgement in the area? There wasn't. So we talked to Rare, who is overseeing the wetland for us, and they agreed that they would put up a sign that would both have land acknowledgement and also explain a bit about the wetland. So thank you to whoever made that suggestion. Will there be jobs? Not in the agreement. We typically do have that kind of language there, that there be some, preferential access for potential Six Nation employees or contractors. But just because the project was already up and running before we started negotiating, and since Amazon is a tenant and not a party to these negotiations, we do not have any language like that in this agreement. Those are all the questions I have from last time. So I'll ask Dalen to monitor the chat for any questions. And then after we've answered those, I'll ask Taylor to walk you through the survey we have. And then I'll briefly talk about the outreach methods we've been using and the next engagement dates.
One question that we did receive is, was there any guidance by an environmentalist or ecobiologist to identify which trees would fare well in this land and give a net benefit to the wildlife?
Yeah, that certainly was given serious consideration. Lauren?
Yeah, I take it that's mine to answer. Fantastic question. I love that question, actually. Yeah, we actually had a lot of input on their planting plan, especially. Generally speaking, at the Wildlife Office, we advocate for purely site-appropriate native species to be used in place of ornamentals, which generally are not indigenous in nature. Within that, we also advocate even more so for species that we know are generally important to Six Nations based on community feedback that we've done in the past. So yes, we have had a lot of input on that, including getting them to remove a lot of the invasive / non-native species that they originally planned on planting. And again, just really encouraging that use of native species purely and things to add to the seed stock and yeah, things like that. Good. That's a fantastic question. That makes me really happy.
Then the other question was, are they using native species? I think that was also answered. Another question just came in. Will Six Nations members be exempt from taxes if they were to get a job there?
My understanding is it would operate just like any other warehouse. I don't know if anyone can comment on that. There's no special provision has been made, and as mentioned, we haven't had any discussions or negotiations with Amazon. It's been purely with the landowner.
Yeah, I'll make just a quick comment on that. Amazon themselves or Broccolini, they have no jurisdiction over the taxation issue. But these are one of the questions that we really want to put on the table when we're talking about the outcome of our court case. We should be able to work exempt throughout all the Haldeman tract and beyond, as far as I'm concerned. But until we have that hammer and win that court case, our hands are tied how far we can negotiate. But that's an absolutely great question, because I totally support that, and I hope that the leaderships, and I'm trying to say leaderships because I hope we'll get our act together down here, actually support issues like that. So, but for the present time, tax exempt issues such as this until that court case comes out, to me, that's a very, very strong negotiable item. Thank you.
That's it for the chat as of right now.
All right, well, we'll wait at least a few minutes.
Here, do you want me to go over the survey while we're waiting?
Oh, that's a great idea. Please do.
Excellent. So, survey was sent out. It's 4 short questions. It was mailed out on the back of the one page of the package. It's also, there is an online link, which will be put into this live stream, but it's on the sixnations.ca website and in the Six Nations app. There were gift cards for, but they're limited in quantity. We appreciate, we received about 100 surveys, which is really appreciated. And they will be compiled all into a report that will be presented to elected council at the end of the survey date. We're asking that all surveys be in by February 15th, 2024. There's a section also, if you have any questions or comments that are not on the questions. One of the other things that Rare had mentioned to us is that they would like to rename the wetland with something of our choice, as it is currently called the Old Mill Wetland. So if you have any suggestions, please also put those in the survey. And if you have already submitted one, you can resubmit with that, or Peter's there is an email and a phone number on the bottom of the package to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, just to underscore that, so please don't hesitate to call the Lands and Resource Department, 519-753-0665 with comments, questions, or to email lrcs@sixnations.ca. That's lrcs@sixnations.ca. Do you have any more questions for us, Dalen?
Nothing right now, no.
All right, following Taylor's lead, this might be a good time to highlight our coming engagements. So the next one is an in-person event on Wednesday, January 24th at 5 p.m. at the Gathering Place. And dinner will be provided to everyone in attendance. And that's followed by another in-person meeting, Tuesday, February 6th at 5 p.m., located at the community hall. And again, dinner will be provided. The last engagement event we have scheduled is another Facebook Live event, and that will occur Tuesday, February 13th at 5:30 p.m. And, I think we've done a good job trying to get outreach for this. We've had mail out, social media reports, newspaper ads, radio updates, and expect to see more of those going forward, especially on the SNGR app and websites.
Peter, it's actually Monday, February 12th.
Oh my goodness. Thank you very much for correcting me, Taylor. So that's Monday, February 12th for, just so I'm clear, is that's for the virtual?
Yes.
Correct. Okay. My apologies.
There's another question that just came in about wondering if there was an archaeological assessment conducted on the land prior to the development and where the report could be found.
Yes, there was archaeology work prior to our involvement in the case. From what I recall, I do not think there were any Six Nations monitors. I believe the archaeology work was, correct me if I'm wrong, please, I believe it was done prior to Broccolini's possession of the property. But yes, we do have an archaeology report available. If you either give us a call at Lands and Resources, again, 519-753-0665, or email lrcs@sixnations.ca, we will send the reports to you.
Yeah, nothing else yet.
I'll wait a few more minutes just in case there's any more. Right. And we'll give another minutes for any questions. I'm a bit surprised. I thought, especially with Phil Montier talking about the litigation, that there'd be a flood of questions.
Just a reminder that this will be available to watch after the live stream's done, as it will be present on the Six Nations of the Grand River Facebook page.
All right, seeing no more questions. I see Dalen still shaking his head. We'll conclude today's live stream. Again, thank you very much for taking the time and listening today. We look forward, to more questions, and really hope we'll see some of you in person on the 24th. Thank you very much.